So the gameplay you're going to be seeing here is an old 4v4 TDM FN match against OP or ST or whatever. They changed their names a few times, this team. And this is going to kind of chain together with the Uncharted 2 competitive commentary I did. So if you haven't seen that, you should check that out, because this is kind of a continuation of that. And I'm going to be talking about Uncharted 3 competitive, and it kind of connects with the past video I did. So picking right off, when Uncharted 3 kind of came out, like, the competitive nature of it, it kind of had a rocky start, and thankfully it kind of like stabilized and it found its little like niche. It kind of like finally found its place in the competitive like atmosphere. And when it comes to Uncharted 3 competitive, it was supported by game, like it did have like game battles, like there was a ladder for it, but it was kind of messy. I mean, it was shocking because there was like 3 pages of like teams that signed up for the first like season on the game battles ladder for Uncharted 3. And out of those 3 pages of teams, I think about 5 teams tops were actually actively playing, accepting challenges and such. The rest of those teams, you would message them, you would contact them, send them a challenge. They would never get back to you. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't even play that game anymore." And it would just be so infuriating. It'd be like, "Why did you sign up for this ladder if you weren't even gonna play it?" Like, I don't really understand. Like, there wasn't really much of an excuse either, because I mean, Modern Warfare 3 kind of came out at the same time, but you have to keep in mind, Modern Warfare 3 was not picked up by MLG during that season, so there wasn't Call of Duty to compete with competitively, and I guess there was Halo, but, I mean, not having Call of Duty there kind of opened up a huge market for competitive gaming at the time, and unfortunately Uncharted 3 did not capitalize on this, but this kind of goes with the stigma of PS3 or whatever. It's not really competitive, but that's a broader topic for another time. But I mean, game battles in Uncharted 3, it wasn't like nearly half as good as Uncharted 2 game battles was, because that lasted for a few seasons and quite a few teams actually were active at the time. Unlike Uncharted 3, where there was like maybe 5 teams tops that were actually playing. And it was kind of messy, truthfully. Like, I mean, there were hardly any like rules or a solid format enforced. To be honest, it was kind of sad. Like, I mean, this isn't all that different from Uncharted 2's like kind of like leeway, I guess, in terms of like rules and stuff, what can and can't be used and what have you. But because of like the nature of Uncharted 3 and how many more like things were in the game, how many things were annoying in the game, it really boiled down to quite a bit of frustration. And there's nothing really you could do about it outside of deal with it and adapt. I mean, I was on it like I kind of jumped around between 2 teams on game battles for Uncharted 3, and I played a few matches, maybe like 4. I played 4 GB matches for Uncharted 3, that's it. And it was kind of wild, to say the least. Like, it really was. Like, M9 rate of fire, a lot of people were using that. It was not banned. I mean, a lot of people, I would go to the GB forums for Uncharted 3, and it was kind of a dry, dead zone there, but I mean, people were discussing this, but nothing was really done to like change the rules so much. So I'd be playing like game battles, and people were using M9 rate of fire. You had people using the Cal and objective modes, and of course the FAL was fair game too. I mean, it was kind of on a gameplay standpoint, it was quite messy, truthfully. Like, it really was. That's the best way I could put it. It was messy, and you really had to kind of fight fire with fire a lot of times, and that's kind of how you had to get by in Uncharted 3 competitive during game battles anyway. Like, there were no rules and stuff, and there were really only 5 teams playing, so when you looked at the ladder, you'd see like maybe like 1 or 2 teams with like a few wins. You'd see that they were playing the same team over and over again, or the same 2 teams over and over again to get the wins. It was kind of sad. It was kind of depressing and unfortunate that this is kind of what happened, but this was the nature of Uncharted 3 game battles for pretty much the entire time, because after Season 1, Season 2 kind of never even happened. I don't even know if I should call it a Season 2. It died after Season 1. No one was playing. It was kind of over. And after that, like, game battle, the whole messy transition there, we kind of went back to the TDM mentality. All the teams that were kind of, like, known or serious about Uncharted 3's, like, multiplayer, they're going back to their tried and true ways of, come on, 5v5 TDM, let's go, best out of 3. Like, we were going back to that again, and it was just kind of sad that people quickly hopped back to that. I mean, even during game battles, there were quite a few teams that were playing, and they wouldn't even follow like the bare minimum rules of game battles. Like, you would challenge them, and they like make up their own rules. They'd be like, "Oh no, we're gonna play a teeny match over and over again." And like, "Oh no, you have to play an objective match on game battles or something." They're like, "No, we don't do that. We're not playing you then." I'm like, "Oh, okay, what is this?" Like, it was just bad, really bad, and poorly executed, unfortunately, and no one was doing anything about it. And eventually, because of this, it just died off with lack of support. And unfortunately, more people were supporting 5v5 TDMs in Uncharted 3 for a while, and that kind of became the nature of the game. And that mentality is still, I'm sure, still is prevalent, or at least it's in the minds of quite a few players who played Uncharted 3 competitive, how it was just TDM after game battles again. Fortunately, though, there was quite a few people, vocal people, and strong individuals who kind of came around and kind of like created a niche on like FraggedNation specifically for Uncharted 3 competitive to kind of like take shape and take form. And I mean, FraggedNation might not be as known as game battles per se, but it has a really strong, like, I don't know, a community that really bands together and kind of creates its own custom thing. And I think that's a good thing, that like a little community could just spawn. Like, it doesn't need no sponsors or anything big like that. You just need a lot of people to band together with a common idea and concept, create a little coalition, and really push for something that everyone can get on board with. And needless to say, there was quite a bit of resistance. There were quite a few people saying, nah, we don't want to do that, FraggedNation's stupid, and no, we're going to stick to our 5v5 teams. There was a lot of like resistance against FraggedNation for quite a while, and not everyone agreed with the rules. There's quite a few bickering. But eventually, people realized that if they wanted to be competitive, if they wanted to play against some of the top teams, they were going to have to either suck it up or adapt and get on board with FraggedNation. And I'm personally glad that this eventually happened. I mean, FraggedNation definitely was a good thing for Uncharted competitive. I mean, it's unfortunate that it took this long for something like this to happen, because I mean, Uncharted 2 did have such a strong initial start with game battles, and then it just kind of dissipated. I mean, this is unfortunate, but honestly, when it comes to MLG and Uncharted, I mean, this might be discouraging. This might seem a little pessimistic, but I don't really think MLG really will ever have a place for Uncharted 3. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad game per se overall. I've played worse, trust me, I can say that, multiplayer-wise. But I just don't think it'll ever have that, because a lot of these big competitive games, like I drop Call of Duty a lot, and trust me, I'm not the biggest Call of Duty fan, but it has a really solid format for how it's done, and it sticks to it, and it's kind of been around for a while. Like, if you look at any of the major COD competitive players, like, these guys are veterans. Like, some of these teams, they've been competitive for like 5-6 years, and they've been playing with the same people. It's really impressive, and I hope that one day Uncharted 3 can achieve that. I mean, there might be some teams that happen, but I mean, just from Uncharted 2 to Uncharted 3, a lot of teams kind of disappeared and stuff, but this is perfectly natural. But hopefully, over time, you will see a lot of, like, people in Uncharted 3, I don't know, looking down the line ridiculous. If Uncharted 4 even happens, if 5 happens, whatever, we'll have such a good foundation, and we can say this is where it really started. And this is where Uncharted competitive kind of, like, took shape. And that's a good thing, I think, for the game anyway, and for people who are competitive. Because, I mean, while I don't think it'll ever be on a major circuit or anything, it won't be, you know, like million-dollar tournaments per se, I think it's good that there's other games that are being competitive and are supported, because this just highlights what I think is most important, not just about competitive gaming, but gaming in general, which is, it highlights there are people out there, passionate people out there. No, yeah, we play games all the time, but we really push. We really have a love and a strong passion for the games. And whether you're competitive about them or not, we express it, and we're passionate people about this. And that's an important message to get across, not just to gaming, but to other mediums as well. At least I think is important. Uncharted 3 competitive, I mean, FraggedNation, it was a good thing, and I mean, a lot of people really don't initially had a good response to it, but I think they eventually came around, at least I think, I don't know, and they might hold some resentment towards it. I mean, I saw some pretty interesting comments when I was still playing about how FraggedNation was terrible, and it was ruining Uncharted 3 competitive, and how 5v5 TDMs is how Uncharted 3 competitive is done. These are kind of the same people that kind of like, they only play Uncharted competitive. I mean, like, that's the only thing they ever know, they ever did, like. You look at their history, and honestly, have they played anything else competitively? Like, I haven't really talked about my experience competitively in the past videos, but in terms of competitive, I played Counter-Strike competitively. My team was fairly good at it. I mean, eventually, we kind of drifted apart, but I still keep in touch with quite a few of my old teammates from Counter-Strike when we were playing in the league and stuff, and it was really fun. A lot of good memories came from that, and I really loved my time playing Counter-Strike competitive. And after that, I would play a lot of Unreal Tournament. Those were good times as well. as good as Unreal as it was in Counter-Strike, but I was competitive at it. I was pretty good at it. Battlefield 2, I loved Battlefield 2. Probably one of the, outside of Counter-Strike, one of the other multiplayer games I invested a ridiculous amount of time in. I mean, when it comes to competitive games, shooters, whatever, I've been around. I'm not one of those people who is like, Uncharted 3, like Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3. And there's a lot of people in Uncharted, which is understandable, who the only thing they've ever played competitively is Uncharted 2, so they don't really have a really good understanding of like what the broader spectrum of competitive gaming is. I've also played some fighting games competitively. I played Super Smash Bros. For those who're familiar with that franchise. I've played with that competitively. I went to a lot of LAN events, to some tournaments, and I usually won. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So competitive fighting games is also something I have a strong interest in. And one thing I always like to keep track of, regardless if I play that game competitively, I always love looking at events. Like, I watched the MLG COD Dallas event. I loved watching those the top tier gaming, like, battle out. See that communication, see that like effective teamwork, and like, I mean, obviously they all have great aim and they're really strong players individually, but seeing them blend together and like as a unit, like execute something against other strong teams is really impressive. And then there's the awesome upsets. I mean, for those who didn't watch, Frico Gaming won, which I don't know if anyone really predicted, and some did because they played a lot. But I think I'm babbling on about COD a little bit too much. And I watch a lot of like competitive like fighting streams too. Like, I love watching Evo. I love watching these like LAN events where people like are playing like Street Fighter 4 competitively, or Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom. Really exciting game to watch. And people also have to understand that in terms of competitive gaming, really make something competitive outside of it like being balanced and stuff, and everyone can like compete fairly, is it's kind of a spectator sport too, kind of like with sports or soccer. I mean, the fans play a big part in that. I'm not talking about fanboys or anything like something blatantly bad like that, but I mean, it's really important that it's enjoyable to watch. I mean, that's kind of my biggest gripe with Uncharted 2, like TDM, like constantly, like some of these matches would just really come down to the minute, and it was just like, are people really gonna want to watch Uncharted competitive and be like, all right, let's watch this 4v4, 5v5, 50-minute TDM, or like 20-minute, I'm sorry, 50 kill, 20-minute TDM deathmatch? Is this really entertaining to watch versus like a really frantic, like pushy, aggressive, like objective match? I don't really think so. Maybe some people out there really love the methodical pace of TDM, but I think in terms of like the broader spectrum of what people want to see competitively, I think the objectives and stuff is far more exciting. That's why you see a lot of other competitive games be about objective based, because it's just more exciting to watch. You see like people play Halo, like capture the flag and stuff, and it's super exciting to watch like the pulls and like the massive comebacks and the plays, or Call of Duty, seeing people like pull some clutch antics on like search and destroy and stuff, last man standing, and he takes out like 3 people on their team. This is exciting stuff versus like it'd just be like a really strong stalemate of team deathmatch for such a long period of time. And I think people really need to come to understand, and maybe like, I don't know, do some research of other competitive games and really like get yourself like, I don't know, a good grounded like background in it, so you can really see what it's all about. Because I mean, I'm honestly not that competitive. I am competitive on games, but I'm not really, I don't know, sports guy outside of like boxing and mixed martial arts. That's kind of my thing in real life, I guess. But that's about it for this commentary. I hope you enjoyed it, and please leave some feedback in the comment section below about like what your thoughts are on Uncharted 3 competitive, because I'm really interested to see, and I'd like to have some back and forth with you guys, see what you guys think. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.